In 2018, Chinese scientist Ha Xiankui announced that he had created the world's first genetically edited babies. Twin girls whose DNA he had altered to make them resistant to HIV. The global scientific community responded with complete outrage. It was unethical, they said, reckless, premature. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. But the uncomfortable question is why? He eliminated a genetic vulnerability to a deadly disease. He made them, by certain measures, better. So, why did it feel like a line had been crossed? Well, Margaret Atwood asked this question 2 decades ago in her 2003 novel, Oryx and Crake. And her answer is far more disturbing than because it's unethical. Her answer is once you start deciding what counts as a flaw in humanity, you risk eliminating humanity itself. This is part 1 of our deep dive into Oryx and Crake, an exploration of seductive logic behind genetic perfection, the cost of engineering better humans, and why our flaws might be the most important thing about us. Atwood sets her story in a near future world where genetic engineering is mundane. Humanity has moved far beyond curing diseases and even growing organs. They are now redesigning life itself to serve human goals. There are a lot of strange creatures in this new world, like the pigoons, genetically engineered pigs that can grow 5 or 6 human kidneys at once. The organs are custom grown from donor cells and then harvested for transplants. And because no corporation can resist the revenue stream, they also sell the pigoon meat, meaning humans are literally eating flesh that contains their own genetic material. And then there are the chicken knobs. Chickens without heads, beaks, or eyes. Just grotesque, tumorless blobs of muscle engineered to produce endless amounts of chicken meat. Jimmy calls them a nightmare. He senses a boundary that has been crossed, though it's not really clear where that boundary even was. Scientists at Organic Inc. also create hybrid animals like wolfdogs or wolf dog hybrids used as security. They joke that creating these creatures make them feel like God. And that is the first red flag. When science starts borrowing theological language, it's about mastery, no longer about medicine. Now, it's tempting to dismiss this as dystopian exaggeration, but it's not nearly as fictional as it looks, like most dystopian literature. Scientists really did create hybrid human pig embryos in 2017 at the Salk Institute. Monsanto really does patient terminator genes, and they did that in the 90s, forcing farmers to buy new seeds each season instead of using seeds from previous seasons. And companies like Moza Meat really are bringing lab-grown burgers into the market. When we call Oryx and Crake speculative fiction, we should be clear. Atwood isn't speculating if this technology will exist. She's speculating what happens when it does, and more importantly, what happens when it's guided by profit rather than ethics. In her world, there are no powerful bioethics committees or regulatory agencies, only corporations chasing market share. And where there's a market, there's always a product, which leads us to the most ambitious product of all, a new version of humanity itself. Enter Crake, the brilliant, ruthless, and convinced that humanity is a failed experiment. So his solution, though, is not to fix humans, but to replace them. But we don't learn this until a little bit later in the book. He engineers the Crakers, a post-human being designed to eliminate what he sees as our fundamental flaws. They have built-in sunblock from plant DNA, pheromones that repel mosquitoes, and digestive systems that let them eat grass and leaves, eliminating the need for true agriculture. And they breed seasonally, so the females enter estrus visibly and mate with multiple males simultaneously, ending the unrequited love, sexual violence, and exploitation. They even come in all colors, erasing race as a meaningful category. Crake even deletes the God spot in their brains to eliminate religion and existential anxiety. And he programs them without alpha personalities so that hierarchies never form. At first glance, this sounds weird. Not terrible, but also just really weird. Because who wouldn't want to solve racism, sexual violence, and environmental collapse? And that's exactly the seduction that Atwood wants us to feel. These are elegant solutions to actual problems. So, why does it feel so wrong? Well, because Crake's list of flaws doesn't stop at war or disease. It includes everything that actually makes us human. The Crakers don't create or appreciate art. They speak simply and functionally. No poetry, no metaphors, because they don't fall in love, and romantic attachment is dismissed as hormonally induced delusion. They accept the world without asking why. They don't even know that they're mortal. And this is where philosophy becomes important. Martin Heidegger argued that human consciousness is defined by being toward death. Our awareness that we will die shapes everything about how we live. It drives us to create art, to seek meaning, and even to love fiercely. Take that away, and you don't just change humanity, you erase it. Jimmy, the humanities minded foil to Crake's rationalism, puts it this way: when any civilization is dust and ashes, art is all that's left over. Meaning, human meaning, is defined by it. But Crake rejects this. For him, art is evolutionary noise. Language is simply a tool, and love is an inefficient impulse. He represents science unmoored from the humanities, a worldview where optimization matters more than meaning itself. Crake's logic rests on a powerful assumption. If something can be improved, then it should be. And this is what we might call the optimization fallacy: the belief that better is an objective standard when we engineer towards something. But better for whom? Better how? Is a species that never falls in love better than one that does? Is one that never suffers better or just emptier? Crake argues that reducing suffering and increasing sustainability is the highest goal. Jimmy counters that meaning, depth, and complexity actually matter more than survival. And there's another problem: genes rarely just do one thing. This is the pleiotropy problem. A single genetic change can influence multiple traits. The same genetic variations linked to depression may also underpin creativity. Anxiety is often correlated with high intelligence. and ADHD is associated with innovative thinking. Engineer out the bad, and you may erase the good as well. And then there is the problem of unintended consequences. Crake thinks he has designed a species free of hierarchy. Yet one Craker, named Abraham Lincoln, starts showing leadership traits. He thinks he has erased religion, but the Quakers invent mythology anyway. Consciousness resists programming. As Donna Haraway warns in a Cyborg Manifesto, a hybrid being's inevitability exceed the boundaries that we try to impose. Life does not follow blueprints. Crake isn't a comic book villain, though. He's essentially a logical extremist. He believes humans are destructive, a failed species, and his solution is eugenics in its most seductive form. Just erase the bad and start over. But the uncomfortable truth is that eugenics always sounds reasonable at first, because who wouldn't want to eliminate disease, violence, and hatred? But the minute you start deciding what traits are desirable, someone has to decide who qualifies. And history has shown us where that road leads. Forced sterilizations, genocides, and a lot of death. Atwood herself once warned, we should probably not try to make things perfect, not even ourselves, for that path leads to mass graves. Crake's vision of perfection demands the elimination of imperfection, which means eliminating humans. So when Crake's plan unfolds, humanity is wiped out by a virus he created. Only one man remains, Jimmy, now calling himself Snowman. Crake spares him to guide the Crakers, the better species, into their new world. But the irony is that despite Crake's meticulous design, the Crakers still crave meaning. They ask Snowmen to tell them about their creator. They invent rituals. They turn Crake, the man who despised religion, into a god. And Snowman obliges, fabricating myths about Crake and Oryx, Crake's lover and victim. Even stripped down beings demand stories. The urge for meaning, as it turns out, is as irresistible as life itself. There's biology irony as well. Snowman suffers constantly from sunburns, insect bites, and hunger, but the Crakers thrive effortlessly. And yet Snowman, flawed and fragile, is the one capable of memory, art, and even grief. The Crakers are content, blissfully unaware of what they truly do lack. So, which is better? To suffer deeply but to understand, or to live content and ignorant? That is the central question that Atwood leaves hanging. Oryx and Crake isn't some distant sci-fi future. It's about the questions that we're facing now. CRISPR can already eliminate certain diseases, and bioengineers are debating how far we should actually go. Transhumanists are imagining enhanced cognition and an indefinite lifespan. And the logic is always the same. We can fix suffering. We can optimize humanity. But Atwood challenges us to ask, at what cost? Who decides what's a flaw and what's better for humanity? And what parts of humanity have to vanish if we try to make ourselves perfect? Genetic diversity gives species resilience. Narrowing that diversity may leave us brittle in the face of future challenges. And beyond the biology, there's the soul, consciousness, culture, meaning. These aren't inefficiencies to be optimized. They're what makes us human. They are what makes us people who actually enjoy being around each other, for the most part. The technology to reshape life is actually already here. The question that Oryx and Crake asks is not whether we will use it, but whether we're wise enough to use it without destroying the thing we're trying to improve. And this is just part 1. In part 2, we'll leave the science behind and look at the actual world that made Crake possible. The corporate dystopia, the inequality, and the idea of utopia that turns paradise for some into hell for everybody else. So, with that said, if you guys have any thoughts or comments about this particular analysis that we're looking at today, be sure to leave a comment below. And with that said, thank you guys so much for liking and subscribing, and I will see y'all next time.